So this is a story that has surely captured the attention of people in Massachusetts. A monitor lizard, not only a monitor lizard, but a monitor lizard with a name. The monitor lizard's name is Goose, has been on the loose in Central Mass for weeks now. Joining us now from the Rainforest Reptile shows out of Beverly, Mack Ralbovsky. Thanks you so much for joining us.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me on.
Okay, so let's get right into it here. Give the viewers some background on yourself and then your expertise with reptiles.
Sure. I'm the vice president at Rainforest Reptile Shows. We also have our sanctuary, RRS Oasis, that houses upwards of about 400 reptiles in our umbrella. And I've gotten my experience. It's a family-run company. I've been doing this since I was a small child. I also branched out and worked at many accredited zoos, working my way all the way up to a curator, an animal curator, which is one of the higher level animal managers within a zoological association or a zoo, and over time has built a lot of experience with not just reptiles, but also all different kinds of taxa. Things like I've worked with rhinoceroses, giraffes, all different kinds of birds, ostrich, parrots, pretty much anything you can think of. I've probably worked with in some capacity or at least for a very short period of time. And at this point, reptiles have always been a passion for me. I've worked very closely observing a lot of these situations. And since 1996, Rainforest Reptile Shows has been the responders to situations revolving dangerous reptiles throughout New England, especially in Massachusetts, our home base. We've been working with Massachusetts Environmental Police on consulting with them for many, many, many years since the initial Cobra at the Stoneham School in 1996, where Michael, one of our co-founders, actually went out and captured that animal out of the school and made sure that everyone was safe. And ever since then, we've consulted on with them on pretty much any reptile case you've seen within the state that revolve illegal possession of animals.
And this alone is great information for our viewers to learn. So thank you for
Yeah,
sharing that background
of
information.
course.
Now we're going to get back to Goose. Okay, so Goose decided to go on a little adventure, disappeared from a home in Webster on July 18th, and then was spotted a week later in Connecticut, and then came back over the border, spotted again in Massachusetts. So, what can you tell us about this very large reptile? Like, this is not your cute little lizard that you have in, a container in your room or somewhere. This is a huge lizard.
Yes. So it's one of the largest species of lizard on the planet. They can get an upwards of a large animal could get 9 feet long, sometimes even a little bit larger, just depending on the individual animal. But Goose is 5 feet from all the reporting and what we understand. I would really like for everyone to remember this is an illegal animal to possess in the state of Massachusetts. In order to possess them, you have to have proper permitting through the state. Um, and it's not a great pet if you're not very well versed on working with things like large reptiles or have a lot of experience working with reptiles in general. They don't make good pets. Like you said, they're big and they get really big. So you need to be very, very cautious. They are also a carnivorous species. This individual, from everything that I've seen so far, doesn't seem like it would be an overly defensive animal. I don't usually use the term aggressive. I usually use defensive because most likely this animal, if they were to see a person, we stand, most of us somewhere between 5 to 6 feet tall. And if an animal like that only stands about, I'd say 18 inches off the ground, but that's a really tall lizard, you look like a giant to them. So they're going to run away from you as their first defense mechanism. After that, if they're cornered, they could potentially do a couple of different things. They could try and bite. They could try and scurry away up a tree or into a hole or to a waterway. And lastly, they will use their tails. So monitor lizards like this, their tail turns into pretty much a whip, and they can cause so much damage to the general sight, and they're very accurate with it that they could actually blind somebody if they hit them square in the eyes. So it's incredibly important that if we do see this individual animal, that we give them and maintain distance, and we alert the Massachusetts Environmental Police, who will handle it from that situation.
And I'm so glad that you said that explicitly. because I think we live in a time where like everyone wants to get a video, they want to get a picture, people want to go
Yes.
viral, and it's so important for people to know that while it is an amazingly beautiful and large creature, give it its space respectfully, call the people who know what to do.
Yes, and like I mentioned at the beginning, we've been consulting with the Massachusetts Environmental Police for many years. We train all the officers in the department on how to deal with potentially dangerous reptiles. So they all have hands-on experience working with these animals, are extremely professional and very good at what they do. So it's important that we leave it up to the professionals, and we don't try and wrangle Goose if we were to try and fire, if we did actually get a sighting. Now, there has been a lot of sightings reported. However, there's been very, very few confirmed sightings where there's been actually a photo of the individual lizard. So if you are in that general area and you do see a reptile in a waterway or you see them from a distance, it's pretty obvious for the most part that you're going to be looking at the lizard if they're on land. If you're in the water, a lot of people have mistakenly reported this animal as a that's actually a common snapping turtle, which are very, very common throughout the state. You'll see them all the time, and when they're swimming in the water, you might just see their head poke out, and if you're not sure what you're looking at, you might think that that's the monitor. So there really hasn't been very many confirmed sightings. There was a lot of news reports of sightings. However, it's difficult to have sightings versus confirmed sightings. So I just want to make sure that everyone understands that it's important that when we're trying to locate this individual animal, that sightings are important, and we want to make sure that if you see it, that you report it. But confirmed sightings, whether it's a photo where it's very obviously like our last photo that we just saw yesterday in Douglas, that it's very obviously that individual animal.
And Max, speaking of sightings, so it feels like he's traveled quite a ways here, right? So about 5 miles from Webster to Thompson, 13 miles from Thompson to Douglas. Is it normal for this kind of animal to do this kind of traveling? Like, can you kind of give us some
Sure.
context here?
Yeah, no, it's a really good question. So, the sightings that were in Connecticut, to my understanding, there were no photographs or anything like that. So it's hard to know if that was a confirmed sighting or if it was just a report. I don't know 100% either way. But I can say that these individual animals, they do travel. However, they're going to most likely probably try and set up a territory. And an animal like this that's in captivity is not to be equated the same way across the lines like a wild animal would be. This animal has never had to provide for itself in a wild environment and deal with things like predators or other animals within that area, as well as seek shelter in order to make sure that they're warming themselves appropriately and do all their natural behaviors that they normally would. It's just like if you have your pet dog at home and they've lived with you their entire lives, they know where the food's coming, they hear that treat bag, they come running, they know what that means. Reptiles in general can build that association. They and this water monitors in general are incredibly intelligent animals. A lot of people don't realize how smart they are. I've worked with Komodo dragons in the past, and we had them fully scale trained, trained to take medications, trained to go from point A to point B. We had them on an exercise routine. There's so many different factors and things that you can train in order to make sure that they are having the best well-being possible. So it's important that we're not equating a wild animal to a captive bred animal. However, there's still those innate natural characteristics of the animal. So honestly, I'm kind of surprised that he's so far from the initial location out in Douglas. But it's not a complete impossibility. So animals are also unpredictable, and it's not something that you can constantly predict exactly what they're going to do. Sometimes you think everything's going to go a certain way, and then all of a sudden they do the exact opposite of what you're expecting. So we can only make assumptions and guesses, but we never know for sure. And we are doing our absolute best to make sure that this animal is found, captured, and is given a great home to live out the rest of their days.
Now, there will definitely be some people who are listening and wonder, well, is Goose's life at risk, like while he's out here on his own? Because to your point, he's been living a domesticated life, so to speak, the same way that like our cat or dog would. So in
Hmm.
terms of his life, can he survive in our climate and for how long if he's never captured?
Yeah, so I'm hopeful that he will be. However, I can't say yes or no in any way, shape, or form. There's been a lot of people that have come out and said, I can capture that animal in an hour, I can capture him in a day. I can guarantee you a lot of these people have never done this in a professional capacity or in a situation where this animal is completely out of its element. It doesn't know what's going on in a completely foreign environment. It's not as easy as going out, looking in the woods, calling his name, and him coming running to you. They are elusive creatures and they are incredibly smart. So, in general, if if this animal were to continue to be um, at large, really what's going to happen is as the cold weather starts to come in, there's no way a reptile like this would be able to survive through a New England winter. They are, a lot of people call them cold-blooded. That is an outdated term and not actually what that current science uses. Typically, you're going to hear the word ectothermic or poikilothermic. Ecto is outside temperature, or ectothermic is outside temperature. Poikilothermic is many temperatures. So if it's 90 degrees, their body's 90 degrees. If they're 70, they're 70. And if it's zero, they're zero. So it's not something that they could survive in the cold environment. However, they could tolerate short-term cold weather, but they're a little bit more sensitive than some of the other reptile species that you might hear of. And again, in Massachusetts, I'm sure everyone has seen things like turtles, or turtles, or snakes and things like that. And those guys, they go into dens, and or turtles, they'll actually weather out the winters underneath the bottom of the ponds in the mud, um, and they're able to respirate appropriately. But they go through a brumation or a hibernation phase that they can actually survive. They're also well adapted for this environment because that's where they're native to. These animals are Southeast Asian, so they're not as versed to a cold temperature drop consistently.
Mac, is there anything else that is important for people to know, as some people are going to be on the lookout for it because this is exciting, or other people are just interested in learning about this for the first time? Anything else important for people to know that I didn't ask you?
I think there's a few things. So the first one is there's a lot, again, a lot of people that are following the story, and it is it's a very unique story. It's not something that you typically see, but we have situations revolving reptiles all of the time. Remember, this animal is illegal to own in the state of Massachusetts. So in order to possess them, you have to have the proper permitting. So for all of this to occur is extremely unlikely, and it's not something that should be demonstrated on people that do it the right way. So, individuals that do get these animals illegally and are trying to possess them, and then issues like this occur, can lead to consequences for responsible reptile owners and responsible sanctuaries like what we do and have been doing for over 30 years at this point. In general, as well, if you're looking at this story and you think that you should go out and try and find Goose, don't do that. It's not a good idea to be going out trying to locate this animal.
Mhm.
If you, especially if you're a reptile person and you think that they would make a great pet, again, can't stress it enough. It is illegal to possess in the state, and it can lead to potential consequences if you do not have the proper permitting. As well as, don't go out and try and trap Goose. It is something that we are working very closely with law enforcement. We're very hopeful that we potentially will find Goose. However, it is still an incredibly difficult feat to be able to locate and capture him, just because of how large of the space that he could potentially be in, as well as the area that he's in is incredibly well vegetated for him to be able to hide in. So we're doing our absolute best and using every single resource that we have in order to locate and capture Goose. But again, we don't want anyone out at the location specifically looking for this individual animal. And if you've read something that you think that you can go out and catch them, I promise you it's not as easy of a feat as everybody thinks that it might be from behind their computer screen or at home and things like that. So leave it up to professionals and make sure that everyone stays safe. If you do see this animal, immediately call the Massachusetts police. They will send out responders to locate the animal and attempt to capture.
Mac, this was all such helpful and interesting information. Mack Ralbovsky of the Rainforest Reptile Shows in Beverly. We thank you so much for joining us. We look forward to hearing from you once Goose is safely captured. Again, just a
Mhm.
reminder, Mac said he knows this is interesting and that people are interested, but please do not try to capture Goose yourself. Leave it up to the professionals who deal with this all the time. Mac, we hope for a interesting, fun, good update that Goose is safely in an area with one of you.
Absolutely. I 100% agreed. And one last thing before I do go here, I do want to make sure that on the other side of things, there's a lot of people that are really interested and want to see Goose go to a good home. There's
Mhm.
also a lot of people that are very nervous about having an animal like this out in the general public. Again, water monitors live with people all throughout Southeast Asia all of the time. This animal, the only caveat to it is it is captive bred, so there is a potential that it could approach a person associating people with food. So the most important thing is if you're in an area where this animal potentially could be and you do spot them, to make sure that you keep a good distance and it's not something that they're going to come up and try and immediately try and bite somebody or go after anyone. That's not something that we do not need to panic over. A situation like this is the big portion of it.
Okay, so if someone sees it, this brings me to another question that I hadn't
Sure,
thought about.
of
Are they
course.
fast? Because in Florida they tell you, zigzag and like there are a lot of things
Yep,
they
yep,
tell
yep.
you in different parts of the country. So now I'm like, is the lizard fast if you have to run? Like, how do you put space between yourself and the lizard? Can you just calmly back up? Like, what do you need to do?
The best thing to do would to be calmly back up, just like you would with any other predator species. If you are to turn around and run away, that can sometimes evoke that predatory response, and they may try and chase. They are very quick moving animals. That is how they capture their prey, is they will full on chase after things and capture them. Um, but don't run in a zigzag. It's very important. That is also a myth. It's not something that is true when it comes to crocodilians, like alligators and crocodiles, monitor
Mhm.
lizards, or any reptile in general. If you are trying to run away from a alligator or something like that, run as fast as you can in a straight line. They'll only move for a short period of time. They're not going to chase you forever, so it's much better to get more distance between you and them as quickly as possible. However, the situation that someone were to be that close and to have to run away from this animal, again, highly, highly unlikely. The best thing to do is if you spotted, back away. And if you're able to and you're in a safe location, take a photo of that animal. And when you're reporting it to the Massachusetts Environmental Police, please send that photo over to them. Again, the difference between confirmed sightings versus reported sightings can be extremely helpful and impactful when we're trying to locate this individual animal. I did have one other thing that came to my mind of a list of questions that I have from other people. A lot of
Mhm.
people have been asking, is this animal venomous? Now, water monitors are not considered a venomous lizard species. However, there have been more recent research indicating that the Komodo dragon, which is a close relative to water monitors, is
Mhm.
actually considered venomous. But this animal is not venomous. There are potentially venomous compounds within their saliva. However, it's not considered venom. They don't have a venom gland or venom delivery system to inject venom into a wound. And they don't have the same kind of complex venom or less complex systems like a Gila monster or a beaded lizard, which are two venomous lizard species, have. However, if a person were to be bitten by this animal, it could lead to infection or issues. So it's incredibly important that medical treatment is sought immediately if, God forbid, something were to happen. Again, extremely unlikely, no reason to panic, but it is important to have all the information in front of you.
And this is just another reason to follow the warnings, keep our distance. Nobody wants to potentially deal with any infections or any other things.
Yep.
So, just all of these reasons to keep our respectful distance
Hmm.
and call you all in to take care.
Of course. Of course.
Mac, we thank you so much, and we look forward to keeping in touch if you guys get a hold of Goose sooner rather than later.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Courtney. I really appreciate the time.
Mac, thank you.